You already know that watching one more YouTube video is probably not good for you. You know you're distracting yourself. You know that when you give me a few more minutes of your time, what you're doing is just stealing a few more minutes away from the real problems that are awaiting you on the other side of these distractions. Why do we do this? I believe that we tend to distract ourselves for want of an inner sense of stillness, for want of a truth. I find that when I dive into social media and any sort of media, the thing that I most keenly hope to find there is myself. When I'm endlessly scrolling, looking, searching, looking, searching. And it's a relief when I find a thing that resonates inwardly, a real relief, and it's the thing that keeps me going. But it doesn't keep us going for long, does it? So what can we do? Detox, destim, remove this bad habit from our life. Yes, we should. We know we should. But why don't we? I believe the answer to this is that humans don't act in the negative. There's no such thing as not doing a thing. There is only doing a thing. And because of that, I think a more positivistic interpretation is required of this problem, which is to say, what should we be seeking to add to our lives that displaces this tendency to stimulate and distract? And for me, I describe this as embracing habits that cultivate stillness. Now, for me, as a lifelong ADHD sufferer, the idea of sitting by myself alone in a room quietly is basically my idea of hell. It is the last thing I want to do, and I will do just about anything to prevent that from coming about. I will fill my social calendar to the brim. I will work my ass off. I will find all kinds of projects to plug into, people to talk to, and failing any of those things, of course, there's this, where you probably are right now. How did I get out of this? Well, a few years ago, something interesting happened to me, something unplanned. Um, like a genetic mutation, it produced something positive that I ended up taking with me. Um, I was already in the habit of going for walks. I've been doing it for a few years. And as time went on, that habit was getting more and more fleshed out. Starting originally with like 22-minute walks, very specific. There's a story behind that. Going to walking around the block, going to walking to the nearby park, and eventually going for longer stretches. Now, this whole time I was stimulated. I had my phone, I had my earbuds, I was listening to music or podcasts for the most part. I told myself this was good, and it was better than not going. And it did motivate me on days where I needed that motivation. But the random thing that happened was one day when I went out for a walk and I found that my earbuds were busted. They were broken. Didn't work. In denial, I tried to make them happen anyway, and I plugged them in and was frustrated as there was sound in one ear and it was kind of staticky in the other, and I tried to play with it and jigger it, just in denial of the problem. So eventually I was like, fine, just go without them. And without that voice in my ear, without that emotional state that I was borrowing from another musician's performance or from another person's conversation, I found that I was left alone inside my own emotional state. Man, was that a surprise. I found this sort of slow flowering of what was inside of me, like it was reluctant to show itself to the light. Maybe didn't know how to anymore. But slowly, as I just walked and let my body sort of do the thinking, I found that thoughts just came to my mind. Things about situations I was in, problems I was dealing with. I wasn't focused on these problems. I wasn't trying to solve them. I was just being in the moment. I was just being in my body. And that practice of being is, I think, what is the core of a stillness habit, is putting ourselves outside of the mode of doing, of achieving, of pursuing, and put ourselves into the mode of being and happening and surrender. And when we do this, we come into ourselves and we find things about ourselves that we needed to know. Maybe things that had been waiting on the other side of the door but had been too shy to knock because it didn't think that there was anyone listening. Open that door and you'll be surprised on the other side of it. Okay, I digress. You get the idea. So, why did I keep doing this? Well, I kept doing it because it really helped me. It helped me think about how to approach creative problems, helped me think about how to approach problems in my relationship, in my work. It helped me take so many of the great ideas that I've been absorbing through podcasts over time and start to really integrate them into myself and into my experiences. I went from having this vast catalog of experiences and impressions, ideas and facts, and the silence and the surrender allowed those things to become part of me in a way that could not happen without the stillness. That's what I found. I would come back from these walks and I would feel so calm and so centered within myself. And so like the little problems that I was facing were actually little problems and not disasters in the making. It helped me embrace a more holistic sense of the journey of life in the moment, in the day. So I kept doing it. I kept going for walks without stimulation. Eventually, I added another habit of stillness, and that is journaling. I started journaling when I was laid off back in 2022. If you've seen the video that I did called Hard Times and Gratitude, that's the start of it. That's when I decided to start with a challenge, which was to identify my philosophy. But what I think I meant when I said that to myself was more something like, what do I really think? What do I really want? What do I really care about? It's so easy to embrace layers and layers of media and distractions. And to, if we don't take the time to integrate those things in stillness, then they sort of become a default. Only when life gets really hard, we find that those outside things are not enough. An unintegrated piece of knowledge is not enough to lean on in a crisis or in a real problem or to make really big and difficult decisions and changes. I think one of the main things that any person can do, especially a young, plugged in, connected person, is not to tell themselves, I need to reduce my screen time this week. Yes, that's a fine thing to do and to achieve. It's good. It's not to say I can't do this, I won't do that, I'm going to remove this. It's to say I'm going to embrace a habit of stillness and to find what that is for you. What is it you do that quiets the mind? For me, it's walking. For me, it's writing. Those two things slow me down enough so that what's really inside has a chance to come out. And the reason this is so important, in the last video, I talked about how a meaningful life isn't something that's found, it's something that's chosen. The reason this is so important is because once we choose a meaningful life, I said that meaning starts to arrive to us. Only if we're not listening for it and watching for it, we won't notice it. This is part of the practice of choosing a meaningful life, not just the decision, but the daily practice. It's how we can combine a sense of action and urgency with a sense of surrender and stillness. Never, never one to the exclusion of the other. Always both integrated into a whole. We act, we affect the world. Then the world acts on us and affects us. And then we repeat. If we put ourselves into a mode where all we're doing is receiving, ingesting, stimulating, and never putting ourselves back out into the world, we'll never really learn, will we? Hopefully by now I've said something interesting or useful. Till I see you again, please take good care of yourself. Be good to each other. And remember, you're not alone.